You hanging any longer. Today we are chatting gut guide to a happy, healthier 2025. And this is something that is so near and dear to my heart. And I know that it has become trending, right, to talk about gut health, but for a reason, right? Your gut health influences every single part of your overall health. I could talk about it for hours and link it really to any single disease or issue. So tonight we are going to dive deep about the role of your gut microbiome, digestion, and then the gut-brain connection. If you have heard these terms and you're very familiar, drop in the chat like I'm a pro. And if you are someone who is new, right? I'm new, I'm a novice, whatever, I'm a beginner. I just want to get a feel of how in depth I should go. I don't want to bore you. I also want to make this really informative. So I kind of want to see where everyone is and where you want me to tailor this. So we will go over my story, as I mentioned, Digestion 101, the gut-brain connection, and then tips to support your gut. And of course, I will give you some time for Q&A. So if you are not familiar with me, welcome, and I'm so happy to meet you. I am Morgan. I am a Chicago-based nutrition consultant. I specialize in holistic nutrition, and I really am a root cause practitioner. I am incredibly passionate about helping women live a pain-free, vibrant life. At the end of the day, this is why I do this work. I'm on social media, I'm sharing recipes, but the crux of it really is to help women live a life without gut pain, hormone pain, all of those things that we've now considered to be normal. I want to demystify that and kind of push against it and realize that you can live and feel really good in your body. I have experience, of course, helping people with gut issues like IBS, IBD, SIBO, all of those, that umbrella of gut dysfunction. And I have a food first philosophy. I think as humans, the most important thing we do every single day is eat. We do this 3 to 5 times a day. So it's crazy that some people don't believe nutrition impacts your overall health, right? It's something we do habitually every single day. And myself, I've had a history of various gut issues, gut and hormone. My gut issues actually first manifested as hypothyroid. I was able to reverse an autoimmune condition, if you're familiar with Hashimoto's. And then I kind of worked backwards and healed SIBO, what I was given as IBS. I had parasites, severe food sensitivities. I couldn't eat any dairy, eggs. Pretty much I was avoiding a laundry list of foods. And now I can really eat everything besides certain foods I choose to avoid for my own health. So this is personal. As I said, like I have dealt with these issues. I mean, you can see in these pictures, I was bloated like this photo every single day. Like I woke up, I would drink water, I was bloated. When I was at the peak of my thyroid issues, I lost a lot of my hair. You can't tell because I'm wearing black, but my hair now is so much longer than what it was. It was shedding. My face was really rounded out and inflamed. I mean, you can immediately tell the difference of my face structure versus that picture. And then I was in daily pain. I was like so frustrated because I didn't feel well and I felt like no one believed me. I was always struggling with something, either heartburn, bloating, belching. It was like hard to work at a desk job because I was embarrassed for people to sit next to me and hear me. I had spent, I actually recently retotaled it. It's probably closer to $35,000 on solutions between testing, doctors, providers, supplements, programs, you name it. I was desperate. I was canceling plans. I was in fear of having like issues. People stopped inviting me places because I would just keep saying no because I was always so anxious I was going to get there and have a stomach flare. And it was sad, right? It was affecting my social life. And I was honestly gaslit by every doctor and told I just had to deal with it, which was also just the most frustrating part of it all. I was told my labs were normal. I was told it was in my head or I was crazy. I was just being a woman, right? I was getting older. I was overreacting. I had an IBS diagnosis and just to take this magic prescription that never did anything, right? So it sucked. And now I no longer, as I said, avoid a laundry list of foods. I can travel with no anxiety. I can make plans. Like, how exciting. I don't follow a restrictive diet. I don't believe in them. If you've heard of low FODMAP or some of these other plans, I do not subscribe or suggest or recommend those for clients. I rarely bloat. I don't even know the last time I was bloated. I have daily bowel movements, sometimes two per day without medications or certain supplements that are actually for bowel movements. And I finally, above all else, I feel free in my body. And I know that this is something that you can have. And so hopefully today we can talk about some strategies that can start you or get you to that next level if you've already started your gut health journey. And my approach is not a FODMAP or restrictive diet. I don't believe in quick fixes. I really don't like to symptom mask. I really believe in that root cause. I will never tell you there's a miracle supplement because, spoiler, there isn't. And I will never invalidate your experience. I believe we all have had different experiences and symptoms, and they're all real and valid. And if you feel them, it's something we need to listen to. When I work with clients and in the work I do, I really focus on the whole body. This really is to find lasting change. Like we need to focus on every single part of digestion, every element of your body, from your brain, to your thoughts. Like everything needs to be involved, body, mind, and soul. I'm focused on finding you answers, right? I don't love to mask symptoms, and of course, above all else, like this is something you can maintain for the long term because it's not restrictive. It's not something crazy that you can only follow for a certain amount of time and then resort in binging, for example, because you were so restricted. That is not health, and that is not good for your gut health. So what even is gut health? For those who are beginners or in the middle, as someone put in the chat, what are these topics? Like, what is gut health? What is the gut microbiome? What does that even mean? Really, what these terms mean, it's basically the balance and function of your GI tract, so your gastrointestinal. I'm going to say GI just for simplicity. And this is particularly talking about your stomach and your intestines, which can also be called the colon. When we talk about probiotics, I know we had some questions about that. We will dive into it later, but it's important to note that those work on the last step of digestion, the colon. And so when we talk about digestion, there's so many other steps that start to make everything go right at the end, in the colon. It's really not about having just a healthy digestive system, because your microbiome really impacts everything from your immune system, obviously your digestion and absorption, but it can also impact your gut-brain axis, which is what we'll talk about. It can actually help suppress certain genetic conditions, right? We say genetics load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. If you have a healthy, robust gut microbiome, you have better chances you might not have an expression of that genetic condition that could run in your family. And when we think about gut health, there's all these terms that feed into it. So we've got your microbiota, or your microorganisms, like the bacteria. We have the digestive functions, like how everything is actually working. We have our intestinal barrier. So if anyone here has heard that term leaky gut, that's what this is referring to. We want to make sure we have robust mucus in our intestine and a really strong intestinal lining so we don't have degradation, and leaky gut can occur. Of course, our immune system, I mentioned, our gut-brain connection, and then our diet and lifestyle also really play a part in this. Of course, diet, but lifestyle is something that, we hear these words about cortisol, stress, fight or flight. That's one piece of it. But there's so many things of your lifestyle that you could do to actually positively impact your gut health. And I will give you some tips tonight. So this is going to look really sciencey. You don't need to read the words. If you're watching this later and you want to pause it and read it, that's cool. I just want to give you an idea of how many things are involved in your digestive pathway, because so many people on the internet, right, are just pushing probiotics. And that really is not the full story here. Like, that's a great option to help support your gut, but there's so many other things we actually need to focus on before we get there. So the first step actually of digestion is your brain, which is pretty neat. The thought, smell, sight of food, right? All these things tell our brain, oh, I'm hungry. And then our brain starts telling all these ancillary organs, let's get ready to eat. The next thing that happens is our mouth starts to produce saliva. The biggest thing here with the brain is that when you eat distracted, and when you eat on the go, and when you eat stressed out, you are immediately affecting your first step of digestion. So if you are someone who is chronically bloated, has stomach issues, and you're not eating sitting down, you're not plating your food, those are things that we should be starting. They're free to do. That should be a non-negotiable, right? No eating on the go unless you're at an airport or something is going on and there's extenuating circumstances. Your body cannot register your eating and it cannot break down your food well enough. Then we hit our mouth. So as I mentioned, salivary amylase is the enzyme in saliva that helps break down our food. We want to chew our food very, very well. So that chewing is mechanical and the salivary amylase is chemical. So this is like that first step where we're actually doing both actions of digestion. The biggest thing here that I see a lot of time, and this is super niche, and this is, a little tip I'm going to tell you all. If you are using mouthwash, you want to be very, very certain that your mouthwash is not one of those generic brands that it's like a kill mouthwash. That's like an antiseptic mouthwash, because you're basically killing off the good and the bad bacteria, and you're hindering digestion. We want bacteria in our mouth. We want a good balance, right? There's so many other things you can do instead of using mouthwash. So oil pulling, salt water rinses. There's ozonated mouthwashes now. You can use a water pick. There's all these other things that I would suggest instead of using mouthwash. And if you are someone who has chronic bloat or GI issues, I would probably look to ditch your mouthwash altogether. Again, chew, right? Super easy, not sexy, but we need to chew our food very well. Most of us chew it once, swallow it down. That is not enough. It makes your gut have to work overtime. Then we hit our stomach. This is something I'm very passionate about speaking on. I actually posted some stuff on my Instagram today about this. Your stomach needs to be incredibly acidic. Hydrochloric acid, which is stomach acid, or HCl is what I'll refer to it as, that is like the most important part of digestion, I would say. The reason it's so important is because it breaks down our food, but it also acts as our immune system defense. The reason being is that this is so acidic, it can actually kill off pathogens. So if you're someone who's maybe had foodborne illness or other things, you likely did not have robust stomach acid to kill off those bacteria. Other symptoms I see is that people feel bloated, distending, like excessive fullness after a meal. Potentially constipation or diarrhea could signify a lack of stomach acid. Gut infections, parasites, foodborne illness, E. coli, and then just feeling like malaise after eating could potentially signal that at the top of the funnel, right, the third step of digestion, you are not having enough of the raw material to break down your food. From there, we go to our liver and gallbladder. These are not to be overlooked. Pretty much every single client I test has some signs of liver struggle. The reason being is we live in a modern world, and that world has consequences, right? There's so much talk now about filtering our air, filtering our water, buying non-toxic. These are not buzzwords. These are incredibly important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. If you have questions, we can talk about it at the end. But this is something that is so incredibly important because our liver works all day tirelessly to detox our body, and our gallbladder actually releases bile to help break down our fat. So we want to make sure that these are working optimally. Our pancreas, another ancillary organ, this is going to push out enzymes. These enzymes really help break down all of our food groups, but mainly carbs. So the bile is going to mainly break down fats and proteins. The enzymes are going to break down carbs. That's why we need them all, because they're working on different macronutrients. So without these, you're probably not absorbing your food, or you're not using the nutrients as efficiently as you should be. And then second to last is our small intestine. So this is what we talked about earlier, right? The colon. This is going to be where we start to get that garden of good microbiome status, the good bacteria. Some bad are going to be in there, right? But we want some bacteria in here, and then mainly a lot of it in the intestines. The large intestine is where we should have the most abundant, robust gut microbiome. I realize I didn't explain this earlier, but I love to refer to the gut as a gut microbiome being a garden. Because if you think about a beautiful garden, it has a lot of different flowers, right? And then we've got rich soil, there's sunlight, we're watering it, and simultaneously we're picking the weeds. And that's how we have this beautiful garden. That's kind of like your intestines, right? We need to give good inputs to get good outputs. Of course, we need patience, right? Not everything blooms all the time, all year. And then we need to do some weeding. And so this is why a lot of people in today's day and age, they've got a lot of stomach issues because they're not necessarily giving the good inputs. You add stress, distraction, all these other things of living in the modern world, and then we've got this storm of GI distress. What I want to leave you with is that you aren't what you eat. You are what you absorb. And that should be, if you forget anything else, like this is honestly the most important, because you could be eating the most amazing diet, but if you're having chronic GI issues and you're not breaking down your food, you're just having really expensive poop. You're not really getting your nutrients well or absorbing them. So there's, bigger issues under that hood of the car. So let's talk a second about the gut-brain connection. Right? We could nerd out about all this for hours, so I'm just giving you a little taste. The gut-brain axis is absolutely fascinating. It's a bidirectional communication between our GI tract and our central nervous system, where the brain is. And this network actually involves a lot of different signaling, neural communication, hormonal exchange, immunological messaging, and physiological functions. Basically, in layman's term, they're constantly communicating through various cells. And when we have this, it's kind of like this beautiful symbiotic relationship, right? We can see on the left, the brain is going to influence motility, secretion. So that stomach acid, the gallbladder releasing bile, the pancreas releasing enzymes, right? It's going to help with that. It's going to help with our nutrient delivery. It's going to help with our microbiome balance. So making sure that garden has a lot of flowers and not a lot of weeds. And then in turn, that gut and those bacteria are going to actually influence our neurotransmitters, right? Those are chemical messaging signals. A lot of them affect how we feel, think, interact in the world, our stress and anxiety levels, our mood, our behavior. There's something really so awesome about this. And I like to remind people, right? Like, have you ever gotten like an anxious stomach or a nervous butterfly in your gut? Like that is because these are so intricately connected that when we benefit our gut health, we're simultaneously benefiting our brain. What's really interesting now is that they're seeing a lot of connections between diet, inflammation, and neurological issues. They're actually even in the holistic world calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, because it can actually start from blood sugar issues, which cause inflammation, which can then build amyloid plaque in the brain. So this is just one example of how connected this all is. So it's so incredibly powerful that I just want you to leave like knowing that you can do things today that will actually positively influence this. But over time, we are the sum of what we do consistently. So we definitely want to start building on habits at the new year, perfect time to start, that help our gut and brain connection. So that gut microbiome, right? We're talking about that bottom portion here. So there's been a lot of research now that actually show the more diverse your gut microbiome and bacteria, the actually better you have for mental mood and clarity, which is quite interesting. There's actually certain strains of bacteria that can cause like depression or anxiety if you lack them, which is quite interesting as well. We will talk a little bit more about probiotics, but probiotics actually can influence your neurotransmitter production. They can help reduce inflammation, which is at the root of all illness, and really help contribute to a positive mood, which is so cool. 90% of serotonin, which is referred to as the happy neurotransmitter, it's actually produced in the gut. So if you want to have good mood and good energy, we need to support our serotonin, which comes from our gut, which is quite interesting, I think. And then, we mentioned that gut-brain signaling, and of course, inflammation and mood disorders. We've seen a lot of studies now showing that increased inflammation can actually exacerbate or cause some development of conditions like depression, anxiety. So this is definitely a reason in itself to really support our gut health. And let's just take a second about serotonin, because I don't think people know about this neurotransmitter, and it's so interesting and important. As I said, it's referred to as that feel-good neurotransmitter. Low levels are actually linked to depression, anxiety, and other mood issues. And if you've ever heard of antidepressants like SSRIs, they're actually working on mood by affecting the serotonin uptake. So they're actually aiming to increase serotonin levels in the brain to then in turn support mood issues. As I said, 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in the gut. It actually is going to not only influence your mood, but it also impacts motility. So it can positively impact, those conditions to make sure you're regular, or, it could cause issues if you don't have enough, like IBS and constipation. And then we've also seen that dysregulated serotonin can actually contribute to gut-brain imbalances, again, affecting that mental health and GI function. So just something that I think is really powerful, right? Ways that we can boost this. So of course, it's winter. The first picture here you're probably seeing is sunlight, but today in Chicago, if you live here, it was actually sunny, and that was the perfect time to get outside, not wear sunglasses, and put your eyes on the sun. Exposure to natural light actually helps boost serotonin synthesis. A diet rich, obviously, in whole foods is going to help, but mainly there's one amino acid called tryptophan. A lot of people blame being sleepy on Thanksgiving to tryptophan. I would argue that it's all the carbs and dairy and sugars, but I digress. People always blame the turkey, but tryptophan is in turkey, it's in eggs, it's in cheese, nuts, and seeds. So that is actually a precursor to serotonin. Your body needs tryptophan to make serotonin. So you could absolutely add those foods in if you're not already consuming them. Exercise helps everything. It also helps increase serotonin production. So want to make sure that you get moving and do movement that you actually like and are excited to do. Of course, supporting your gut health. We will talk a little bit about probiotics, but making sure you have a good, strong, robust, diverse gut microbiome, if I haven't drilled that into your brain enough. And then mindfulness. I think a lot of people feel stressed out about meditating, which is quite ironic, but I don't think it needs to look like anyone else. I think if you find 1 minute where you can breathe per day, that's great. If you like to sit down and do a full meditation or breathwork practice, awesome, bonus points. But if you can just get 1 minute in or put 2 reminders on your work calendar to take a deep diaphragmatic breath, that is also really helpful. And gratitude journaling can actually help with serotonin. I like to think of 3 things I'm grateful for before I go to bed. Sounds cheesy, but it actually helps put you in a better mood. It's also been shown and studied. So you could try that out for size 2. And all of these really are, free or low cost to add in. All right, quick note on the vagus nerve. So if you look on the left, this picture, do you see that vagus nerve that's in yellow? The gut and brain are connected, as we've talked about, and there's actually a nerve that runs from the base of our brain down to all these different organs, mainly our gut. It's called the vagus nerve. It's also nicknamed the wandering nerve. As you can see, it wanders around. But there is science that show our vagus nerve is actually in charge of things like motility in our body, which is quite interesting. For people who have GI issues like constipation, maybe SIBO, there's definitely a motility, aspect to that. There could be some work on the vagus nerve that might need to be done to rev up the function. Basically, it's helping our GI and brain talk. As we've talked about, that motility aspect is really important. You want to make sure you are having healthy bowel movements every single day. Because I talk about poop for a living on the internet, I will share with you all a regular healthy bowel movement is 1 to 2 bowel movements per day. It's a log, brown in color, not loose, not pebbles. If you are not going that, we need to rev it up a little bit because you are likely not detoxing well, or there's something going on with your motility. So the biggest thing here, right? We talk about the vagus nerve, we talk about the gut-brain connection. We've talked a little bit about stress, but what I want you to see is that on the stress side, what happens is your gut becomes inactive. And so when we are stressed, eating when we're rushed, eating while we're reading a stressful meeting, stress is all around us today. As we said, like we live in a modern world and it's stressful. And so when we are trying to have optimal digestion, like this cannot be underestimated. Like you need to have robust nervous system regulation, meaning you can't be running on fight or flight all day. It's not a badge of honor anymore to be running on, chronic stress, lack of sleep. This is not serving you, and it's not serving your gut health. And then in turn, it's going to affect your vagus nerve. It's going to impact your production of stomach acid, right? So there's so many things that we need to do to kind of center ourselves. But going back to that breathing, right? If you could take 1 breath before you sit down to eat, that can actually help put you in a calm parasympathetic mode to better digest your food. So it's all connected. When we talk about your gut microbiome, the biggest thing is eating a lot of diverse fiber-rich foods. So that could be things like chia seeds or flax seeds, so seeds. That could be nuts. It could also be fruits and veggies. Those are going to be our main sources of fiber. There's data now that we want to be eating around 30 different types of plant foods per week. So that would be something like maybe you're eating cucumbers and carrots and peppers, you're adding in lentils, you've got chia seeds in your smoothie, you make oatmeal with flax, maybe you make protein balls with hemp seeds. There's so many ways to get different plant foods, right? It's not just fruits and vegetables, but we really want to make sure that we are getting a diversity of food and getting enough fiber. The RDA, so that's like a recommended daily amount of fiber per day for women who are above the age of 19 is 25 grams. Most of us are not getting enough. So we really need to make conscious choices when we are making our foods to get adequate fiber. I like to put this picture of chia seed pudding here because it's super easy to make, very little ingredients, and it's a really nice way to get 10 grams of fiber in. So that's already going to get you like half of the day. Another way that we can support your microbiome is probiotics. As you know, probiotics are bacteria. We can find these from food. They're in fermented foods like Greek yogurt, kefir, kimchi. So those are sauerkraut's another one. Those are amazing ways to get this in naturally. The other way you could do this is through supplementation. I want to have a blanket statement about supplements. There is no one magic supplement. Never, ever buy supplements from a third-party retailer. There's just like the beauty industry, there's so much money to be made in the supplement industry, and there are so many brands that counterfeit supplements. The bottles look nearly identical. I had this happen to a client with the next product I'm going to show you. I am going to actually link a QR code to my online dispensary, which I trust. They only work with supplements and they have correct storage practices. So that's another important piece of this, right? You want to make sure it's stored at the right temperature for the right shelf life. The other thing too is you'll see on bottles at the store, especially like at Whole Foods or some other health food stores, there's a lot of labels like 25 billion, 50 billion, and it's like, which product do you want? More is not necessarily better. Sometimes these products, right, these like greens powders with probiotics and all this other stuff, and these probiotics with 50 billion CFUs, they're not necessarily better. The reason being is you want your probiotic to be silent. That means it gets into your body, it works in your gut, but it does not upregulate inflammation. Some of these products on the market actually have too much going on. They're like kitchen sink formulas. They throw everything in there, and they actually can rev up inflammation and cause more damage than they can do benefit. So the reason being I share that is because, oh, bummer, this picture hasn't loaded. This is the probiotic I recommend. It's called Megaspore Biotic. It's good for people with both constipation and diarrhea. It's shelf life stable for up to 5 years, and it is single strain. So it is not, or 2 strains, excuse me. The sister product is multiple. It is going to help recondition your gut without upregulating your immune system. It gets in there, it works silently. It's a fabulous product. The bottle is pink and blue, so I'm sorry, I don't know why this picture isn't loading, but if you scan this QR, you can sign up for my online dispensary. I'm giving everyone 10% discount who joined us, and you will be able to order this product and you can try it for yourself. If you want to take a screenshot of this or use your phone or write it down, this is suggested dosing. And then I also at the end have a guide where there is dosing for this that I will allow you to access as well. So toning your vagus nerve, this is another thing that you can do for gut-brain connection. This is going to help tap into your rest and digest mode. The other thing too that's really quite interesting about the vagus nerve is strong vagal tone can actually help us respond to stress better. They did studies that people who actually had stronger vagus tone, they actually were able to respond to stress and bounce back into that parasympathetic calming mode faster, which is really interesting. I just find this also fascinating. So sorry if I'm nerding out. Someone had asked something about constipation. This could definitely be a part of constipation. I see this a lot. Constipation is usually multifactorial. It could be there's not enough good bacteria. It could be some dehydration. It could be some stored trauma. It could be diet stuff. It could could be inflammation. It also could be your vagus nerve. It could be 10% of all of those, right? It's never just one thing with gut issues. It's like a little detective trying to figure out exactly where all the things are coming from. So the other thing you can do with your vagus nerve is deep diaphragmatic breathing. That actually means breathing into your stomach so your stomach expands. If you've ever seen a baby breathe, they naturally do this. And as we age, we kind of lose this. We start to chest breathe. Chest breathing actually increases anxiety. So we want to sit down and take deep breaths in our stomach. Fill up. Audible exhales are also really nice as well. If you want to take a breath, if you're listening now, you can do it. No one can hear you, and it will be very beneficial. The other thing that you can do is actually sing or hum. The vibrations of this actually activate the vagus nerve. The other thing you can do if you don't like either of those is actually gargle. So instead of the mouthwash, right, we're coming back to that, just gargle with cold water. You can just make sure that you're gargling maybe 20, 30 seconds. That vibration will also activate your vagus nerve. And then a healthy diet, right? Always coming back to nutrition here. So not only is this good for your gut microbiome, but a healthy, balanced diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So that's why I've got my picture here of our chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds. Those are rich in omega-3 anti-inflammatory fatty acids that can actually help support your vagus nerve function, because our gut health is linked to our brain and our vagus nerve. And so it's, this whole interconnected communication. All right, we're at the end. I want to give a minute for questions, but I also know that if you have to hop off, I want to give you 1 second to see these QR codes. We'll come back to this, and then I have some closing thoughts, but I have a few exciting opportunities. So if you liked what you saw here and you're interested in taking charge of your gut health, this is the first time I'm actually talking about it, but I'm launching a women's gut group. It starts at the end of January. I am so excited for this. There's so much power in healing together, and this is going to be way more cost effective than my one-on-one program. So scan that QR. You can join today and get preliminary discounted pricing. You can also download my free gut healing guide. So that's in the middle. This is going to have dosing on that probiotic as well. The link to my online dispensary, some gut healing recipes, and then I also have a link for my one-on-one consultations. If you are someone who's had it with dealing with bloat, GI issues, IBS, IBD, you name it, if you resonated with my story, I can help you feel better. So I would love to work with you. And if you need anything in terms of questions before you dive in, my email is on that website as well. All right, so if you want